Okay, we should be live. Welcome everyone. Let me know in the chat room if you can see and hear me okay, and we'll just dive right into it. As usual, we have quite a bit to cover this evening, so let me know in the chat room. And we will proceed. I see Eileen is in there. She's usually the first one to tell me. Dr. Darnell beat her to it. Yes, excellent. Thank you guys. All right, we have lots of people in the chat room this evening. I'm going to dive right into this with our headline, and we're going to look at the beast system as we've been doing, but just a little bit of a review. But we're going to be examining the mark of the beast as well as the beast itself, himself, however you want to put first beast, second beast. We've received quite a few questions by email since the last live stream where we were talking about the mark of the beast system related to the nano diamonds, Libra cryptocurrency, and the blockchain system, and how those three components add up to and are related to the mark of the beast. So as we proceed through this evening, that's the primary focus, is to answer some of those questions that were posed to me in chat room. Okay, so let's go right to scripture, and then we are going to go through quite a few different topics this evening that should all add up to this. I'd like to start with Revelation 16, and I'm not going to read the entire chapter. This is the first 6 bowls of wrath, and then there is the 7th bowl of wrath contained in this chapter. And I'm just going to touch on just a couple of areas, a couple of excerpts. Go pour out on the earth the 7 bowls of God's wrath. And that comes from the first verse. So the first angel went and poured out his bowl on the earth, and loathsome malignant sores broke out on those who had the mark of the beast and worshipped its image. So you can certainly go through all the rest of these. Again, very familiar scripture, but as we've been doing lately, we are taking those familiar scriptures and placing them into the context of today alongside the technology that we examine, and also that historical perspective as to the origins of the technology, combined giving us a deeper appreciation and interpretation of familiar scriptures that take on a new life in the light of technology, historical perspectives, all merging together today in the modern time. Let me have just a moment to take a look at, come on, my system's a little slow here this evening. Okay, so we are looking at Revelation 16 here, and I'm going to relate this to a new area of research for Kathleen and myself. I want to preface it by saying we're learning with you. Many of the topics we present to you early on in our discovery process, in our research process. It's not that we have it fully formed and fully understood, but we are walking with you in the learning process, and so what we're doing is pointing you in the direction of an area of research that you may find of interest, that you may want to go ahead and proceed on your own and dive a little bit deeper into that area. And that's appropriate for Revelation 16 and the bowls of wrath, inciting the Chirogeneza incantation bowls. These are literally bowls that are used to practice black magic with, to call upon spirits and to bring upon the seeker of information from those spirits, including the governors, to be presented information, knowledge, guidance, and seeking of not only answers to questions, but of course wealth and power. And so this was predominant throughout Mesopotamia, the Middle East that we would call it today, and into Egypt and certainly Cairo. So we're going to introduce a little bit of that to you tonight. It won't be real in depth because we're just getting started, but that's what these images of these 3 bowls represent, and these are recipes, as we have cited many times in the past. in the black arts, in the black magic, in the mantic arts, there are recipes. Those recipes are captured in books. And you may recall our discussion about Daniel being instructed by God to seal up the books. And those were books containing recipes, just as we've made reference to the Chinese day books. Those are books of recipes. Those same recipes or similar recipes are reflected here in these bowls. These are actually written recipes in which incantations, the worshiping, the pleading, the reaching out to spiritual entities, and some of which are even drawn in the bowl, and in many cases you'd have the image of Lilith, for example, in the bottom of the bowl. You also recall from discussions on alchemy, things known as scrying bowls, where a bowl would be filled with water, or in the case of Nostradamus, it's theorized he had bowls of mercury, and then he would place a cloth over his head and capture the vapors, which are certainly poisonous, but they are hallucinogenic as well, and capture those vapors, bringing him into a trance-like state, and he would have visions called scrying in the reflection within the bowl of mercury, similar as is done with a mirror, scrying. So there are a lot of applications to bowls, and we'll get to that a little bit further. I also want to go to Revelation 13 and the first and second beasts. Again, I'm just making very short references to the overall chapter, which is familiar to all of you. The beast out of the sea, and I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. Okay, we know this. So we go on through here, and they worship the dragon, which gave power unto the beast, and they worship the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months, and he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle, and them that dwell in heaven. Okay? He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity, and he that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. And beheld, another beast came up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns and a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. And he exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. And he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles, which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth, that they should make an image to the beast, which had the wound by a sword, and did live. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, and that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. So let's take that into the context of many of the things that we've spoken of related to the beast in the past. In particular, earlier this year in Entangled Magazine, I presented the technology behind solid holograms. I offer to you that reference of a solid hologram to the image of the beast because the miracles of the beast and the beast system in terms of controlling humanity, and the mark of the beast controlling buying and selling. All of these things, when we combine the technologies we've been examining over the last almost 3 years of live streams now, we can readily appreciate that these words captured in Scripture describing the beast, the appearance, and the functionality of the beast, possibly, quite possibly, could all be manifestations of modern day technology. So where I'd like to take you is to a point of conjecture, because I have a high degree of confidence in the application of solid holograms, artificial intelligence, quantum computing in the image of the beast. Okay? And so what I'd like to offer to you is a point of conjecture, just something to think about and consider on your own. And that is, I like to be specific when I cite technology to something that is written about and portrayed in Scripture. So to be specific when I'm talking about the beast, and we offer three-dimensional solid holograms. And again, review the Entangle magazine for the technical details on that. That's related to the beast, but certainly the beast has the spirit of the dragon indwelling within that beast. The spirit of the dragon, the Antichrist. As it relates to technology, I'd like to be specific on another point, and that is this. Artificial General Intelligence, AGI. Let me read you the definition of that. We've cited this many times before, but I always like to give their explanation of their technology. Artificial General Intelligence is the intelligence of a machine. Now, bear in mind what I just read in terms of excerpts about the beast, okay? And the Antichrist spirit. Artificial General Intelligence is the intelligence of a machine that can understand or learn any intellectual task that a human being can. It is a primary goal of some artificial intelligence research and a common topic in science fiction and future studies. AGI can also be referred to as strong AI or full AI or general intelligent action. Okay? I offer to you that reading of their definition of AGI and overlay that onto the spirit of the Antichrist and the beast. That artificial intelligence, their pinnacle of development, their goal that they're shooting for is artificial general intelligence. And I have further explained that in the past as a point at which a machine will not only be able to learn on its own, which it, at the highest levels of AI today, in the world going beyond machine learning, to deep machine learning, to the ability for machines to learn from their mistakes, as exhibited in the games that they have played, chess, AlphaGo, etc. But going beyond learning from mistakes is the acquisition of data, acquisition of information, and being able to infer, and this is the language of artificial computing, to infer a solution, an answer, an action. To infer means that the information is brought in and there is a contextual, it's put in context, a contextual relationship of that information to the environment that that AI system is exposed to, that it is working within. Now, most AI today is a very narrow AI, narrow, specific, very well-defined environment in which it operates. However, the move is towards this artificial general intelligence in which AI can operate in the final analysis, the final goal, can operate anywhere in the world, in any environment, and can take in the information from that environment, therefore the context, and make sense of that information. To infer, which also is to imply, is to make a, reach a conclusion or make a inference about the meaning of what's going on in its environment, meaning that it can project, it can anticipate, it can look forward, not just react, but look forward and anticipate its own next thoughts and actions that it will implement within its environment. This all builds towards full consciousness, and again, scientists, philosophers debate over the definition of consciousness. But this is moving to a form of machine consciousness that is mimicking human consciousness. It will never equal, it will only be a neuromorphic level of consciousness. Okay? It takes on the patterns. This is what classical and quantum computing, driving AI in those worlds, it focuses upon pattern recognition. And so the consciousness of an AI system, moving almost to artificial general intelligence, an artificial system has a form based on patterns, a form of consciousness that is only built out of patterns of human behavior. Therefore, it's not true indwelt or created by God, created consciousness. So let's go to the next step, which is self-awareness, known as sentience, the sentient status of AI, to where it is self-aware of itself existing in an environment. So when we apply this to the image of the beast and the spirit of the Antichrist, and we get to the artificial general intelligence level, in which it has a form of consciousness and a form of self-awareness, for all intents and purposes, to the average human observing this image, and I again believe that it will be a projected image, a 3D projected image that is a solid hologram that then performs these seeming miracles. This is an artificially intelligent system, and at that AGI of general intelligence, meaning it has the ability to understand the world around it, to take in any information, make sense of it, understand it, more than just process, but understand it in context, to infer its next actions and to anticipate and to prognosticate its actions as well as those of humans. We now have a system driven by quantum computers. This is not a classical computer system. At this level, AGI, at this level of a solid hologram image of the first beast from Revelation and its actions, including its awareness of all humans, tracking all humans simultaneously, okay? Tracking simultaneously all humans, and therefore restricting their behavior and their actions and their permissions into the beast system. All of that can only be accomplished in real time by a quantum computing system, not a classical supercomputer. So I'm giving you the pinnacle of what they're shooting for. Quantum computing driven AGI, which, as we look at that and overlay it on these familiar scriptures, those scriptures we're going deeper into take on a new meaning in today's time, in the context of the modern era. That which was written by John on the island of Patmos, as best as he could describe the technologies that we have today. And it leaps off the page at us. And it's clear. And it's obvious. And we can see where science is taking the world. So where I want to go to next is to address some of the email questions that came in. And there were, again, reflective of, I'm sure, similar questions from many people who did not email. But we want to clarify, going back a little bit into the live stream discussions about nanodiamonds, Libra, blockchain, and to then clarify the mark of the beast. Okay, Kathleen and I are not saying we can say definitively what it will look like, what the image, what the symbol itself is, nor how it comes about. We're still in the realm of learning and conjecture on that. But there's some misunderstanding about how nanodiamonds, Libra, and the blockchain kind of fits into the mark of the beast. And so we're going to clarify that. But before I jump into that, did you want to?
I was going to join you, but I didn't know if you wanted to.
Yep. Before we dive into that, I'm going to bring my lovely wife on. So let me get her a chair, as I should do as her husband, right?
Thank you, thank you. No, I'll take this white one.
The white one?
Yeah.
That's not very comfortable. Okay.
Thank you.
Get your power cord. I'm really dressed for the occasion. It's cold tonight. My wife is overdressed. Cold New Hampshire night. It's been a while since you've been on camera with everybody.
Yes, it has. It has.
So, the questions regarding, how does the mark of the beast fit into all this? How does it relate to all this? It isn't so much that nanodiamonds are going to produce the mark of the beast, nor that Libra and a blockchain system is going to produce the actual mark of the beast. My conjecture, my scenario that I've presented for many, many years is that the mark of the beast is an outward manifestation of the receipt of a electromagnetic signal by way of 5G or 6G transmission. When a person makes a free will decision to take the mark of the beast, they are then opened up to this electromagnetic transmission, a signal, a Wi-Fi signal, if you will, that triggers the reproduction of dormant nanoparticles. Now, those dormant nanoparticles, I'm not saying are nanodiamonds. They are biological nanoparticles of DNA, of a third strand of DNA that begins to replicate. And because of that replication, my scenario is that there will then be an outward visible mark on the forehead or on the back of the hand, the right hand, because of that free will decision and that replication process. And during that process, a person's mind is affected to the extent that they lose all awareness that they've even undergone a transformation. But they are then connected to what you might describe as the hive mind. And they lose that independent thought, that independent free will. And as we said in the last live stream about the mark of the beast, they are no longer found in the book of life. They are no longer found in the Lamb's book of life. They're no longer God's creation because of this distortion, this disruption, this really a transformation of the DNA that God created into a satanic inspired but man manipulated and created third strand of DNA. This is different from the nanodiamonds that we're talking about that are functioning as sensors throughout the world, functioning as edge computing sensors that are feeding information through the cloud into ultimately the quantum computing systems. But this in the classical computing system is the connection that we gave you with dust identity and Algorand. The reading, one of the questions that came up was, what was I reading from when I was reading the real technical aspects of Algorand and the nanodiamonds on Thursday's live stream, and that technical information came from Dust Identity, from their own press releases. If you go to the news tab at Dust Identity, go to the news tab and you'll see exactly the same information press release that I was reading from. So I received a number of emails asking the source of those technical details. The point is here, and again I'm addressing questions by saying this, is that nanodiamonds make a physical connection, being physical, to the digital realm by way of the information, the zeros and ones, that literally are placed by way of a pulsed laser. Okay, it's a very specific nanometer wave, very specific wavelength that is used with a laser to deposit, to impart a 0 or a 1 within the multiples of nitrogen vacancy voids, or called defects, within these nanodiamonds. So again, maybe I was reading too quickly Thursday through the technical aspects, but there is as many as anywhere from 500 to 3,500 of these defects, these vacancies, within diamonds that are industrial diamonds, okay, that are created for this purpose. And the purpose is to retain zeros and ones, and that's represented by the spin, okay, the spin from up to down or down to up of the particles within the vacancy. In this case it's a nitrogen vacancy, but they will do this with the associated electrons within. So it's the change in the spin of the electrons within the nanodiamond that results in either a 0 or a 1 being recorded and therefore stored in the diamond. As long as the diamond is intact, so too is the information. So as a storage medium, it's very robust. It's as robust as a diamond. But the interesting thing is that there is now, as Dust Identity's paper was indicating, there is a physical connection by way of the diamond to the digital world, which is the zeros and ones within the diamonds. Now we go to the larger scale. What we're talking about here is that this digital connection to the physical world allows the blockchain system, which is digital, to be connected to the physical world by way of the diamonds. And because they're in the order of a billionth of a meter in diameter, and we're talking about anywhere from 20 to 100 nanometers, but still incredibly small, definitely subatomic, okay? Or no, I shouldn't say subatomic, but submolecular, okay? We are talking about material that you would not even be aware of was residing in your body because of its size, and diamond is biocompatible. Therefore, there's no attack by the white blood cells of our immune system, okay? These nanodiamonds we inhale, we ingest, we absorb through the skin from the environment in which it's distributed already and will continue to be distributed. So what we're giving you, if you will, a smoking gun, we're giving you the actual physical connection of the beast system to people. Again, we're not talking biological third strand of DNA. That is also in the nanometer scale, but it is not composed of diamonds. It is composed of DNA. But in connecting to the beast system, humans, that is done by the nanodiamonds within our bodies and on our bodies and throughout the environment. Again, this is open in the literature. These function as sensors that gather information and not just store information, but transmit the information. Quantum computers are set up for this. Qubits are set up for that, let's call it a relay system of receiving and retransmitting information by way of nanodiamonds. Now in the supply chain, the supply chain scenario that we've talked about on Wednesday and Thursday last week, that's all handled by classical computers. What I'm describing is the beast system in which it controls. It monitors, it surveils, and it controls all humans. That can only be controlled, handled by quantum computers tied to the nanodiamonds, which have the physical to the digital connection. So it's an interface. Now we throw in Libra, which is the global currency that we've been talking so much about. It builds out its blockchain system. Connecting the blockchain system to humans that have taken the mark of the beast, that happens through that interface of nanodiamonds. It does not mean that the nanodiamonds are producing the mark. That's not what I'm saying. I'm simply saying that that is a communications interface using diamonds between the blockchain system that is a result of the Libra cryptocurrency system. So again, if you'll go back into the last couple of issues of Entangled Magazine, I provide all of the detailed breakdown of how a cryptocurrency operates, how it builds out a blockchain, what is a blockchain, how does it build out, how does it operate. You'll have all of that background information. So again, to work backwards, the mark of the beast is something that I believe is a biological manifestation resulting from the third strand of DNA being activated. Separate from that, but in conjunction, because the mark of the beast obviously works with the blockchain beast system, Libra cryptocurrency system, nano diamond sensor surveillance information interface from digital world to biological world. All of those formulate together, come together as the pieces of the beast system. And at the head of that is the artificial general intelligence driven by quantum computing that is manifesting as the image of the first beast through three-dimensional solid holographic projection driven by a quantum computer. I think it was, I should have looked this up, but I think it was the February or the March issue this year of Entangled Magazine where I went into the technical details on the solid holograms. These are all existing off-the-shelf technologies. None of this is projecting. The holograms, solid holograms, controlled by quantum computing, nanodiamonds, Libra, blockchain, third strand of DNA, all existing off-the-shelf technologies. Okay? So I wanted to make sure that I covered those. Now I want to take an email that I received just before this live stream. I'm not going to identify the author, and I'm not going to identify the person that is being described here. But I would like, with all of what I just gave you, I'd like to read this to you. Okay, let me see, just a moment.
And I have a few questions too in the chat room.
Yep, we'll get to it. I want to keep a train of thought here. Let's see. Oh, I see it. Okay, I got it. That's the problem, as I say with emails. I get so many that come in after it that it just kind of overwhelms me when I come back. Where is that? I just saw it. There it is. Okay. It's very short, and you'll appreciate this. This is the quote. Many heroes are born and shaped from crisis. There are many Greek heroes that are unseen, unheard, and unappreciated. There are legions of heroes out there fighting every hour of every day, but they are not seen or heard. They are the heroic Greeks, not the lazy Greeks. And again, I won't identify who said that. I simply say this: read the November issue of Entangled magazine. You'll know who I'm speaking of. But let's take a couple of words. Crises, problem, reaction, solution, Hegelian dialect, the modus operandi. Okay? Legions, need I say more? Spirits, right? The legions of demons. All right, so I think I've addressed the questions. You have some more? Let's see what's going on.
Well, Carol sent us an email that she had gone to her financial advisor
Mm.
and they weren't aware of Libra or what we're talking about in terms of a financial reset of all monetary funds worldwide. So she had a question. Again, I don't know that we can get into answering everybody's question. I don't have the answers for that. If you're braver
Yeah.
than me, you can.
I
She said,
read her question
yeah,
earlier
about
in the
paying
day.
taxes. How is that going to work? Basically, how are people going to make payments if they don't
Sure.
want to use Libra?
Yeah, I think the question was posed in the live stream, the last live stream in the chat room. And my answer then and my answer now is, first of all, we're not financial advisors. We are very reluctant to offer financial advice. How it's going to play out, I don't know. I have conjecture, I have suppositions, I have expectations. This is related to the debt reset, not just to Libra. First of all, Libra, it doesn't surprise me that her financial advisor claimed, and I'm going to say claimed myself, but stated that he didn't know anything, he had never heard about Libra. That may be true, but at the same time, I think that it's probably a financial advisor who's hedging his bet by not wanting a client to get involved in cryptocurrency, or not wanting to show that he didn't have a full answer,
Full understanding.
about Libra. And certainly in the context of Libra, how we are presenting it, I wouldn't expect anyone to have an understanding of Libra as you and I do. And that sounds like I'm being full of myself here, but we are on new ground here. And we're even having to, put some conjecture and speculation out there. But it's for a purpose of not causing fear, the speculation and conjecture, but it is for the purpose of thinking about the topic. Again, the critical thinking about, okay, here's something I haven't heard before. I'm speaking for our audience, our friends, our patrons. I haven't heard this before. I need to ask some questions. I'm being pointed in a direction, so I'm going to go do my own research in that direction, just as she did with her financial advisor. So again, in the broader context of discussions, what we are trying to do is to prompt that individual research. It's, as I've said many times, sometimes you have to know enough to be able to ask the appropriate questions. So we're steering you towards asking questions in a specific area because now you know enough, because you've been presented a topic, presented an area, and now you go, wow, I need to find out about this. And I applaud her for doing that, going to her financial advisor. But, we even know a couple of financial advisors, and I think that if we were to approach them, and they're just friends, or we're not clients or anything, they wouldn't have clue one about.
Well, they've heard that it's coming down the pike, but they are not privy to all of the details as well. I think they've studied and looked into cryptocurrencies, plural, but
Sure.
not Libra exactly. You know, and the difference with Libra is that there is going to be financial backing with it. You
Yep.
know, there's some sort of, you know, there's deposits
reserve.
behind that. Yes.
A reserve.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the major companies in the world are putting, you know, their name to that.
Yep.
Sure, they've been coerced as well, but
Yep.
you
Yep.
know, they're all behind it. Many of them.
Yep. And again, in the November issue, we've outlined most of the businesses so far publicly that we're aware of that are involved in Libra.
You can go out to the Concordia website and you'll see Coca-Cola just came on board. Major companies are involved in the pushing of the new Libra currency.
And they have to. Again, as I said on Thursday in the detailed breakdown of this, these companies have to. The business sectors have to get on board because they know that they will be locked out, that they will go bankrupt if they don't get involved in Libra as the one world global currency. Okay?
So we have
more questions?
Yep.
Sure.
Yep. Susan said, am I understanding correctly that those covered by the blood of Christ won't have this connection and transmission by the nanodiamonds even though we've ingested them?
I think the question is more related to the mark of the beast. Those of us that are covered by the blood of Christ, we will not take the mark of the beast. Again, it's a free will decision. So, mark of the beast does not apply to us. We are found in the Lamb's Book of Life, and we will remain so. Now, the nanodiamonds themselves, the question perhaps would be, will they have an effect upon us? Our information coming from us, again, I said nanodiamonds will be in our clothing, in the foods that we ingest, they'll be a part of us. The surveillance of us by way of the nanodiamond sensors connecting to the beast system will take place. We can't escape it. We're fully immersed in the beast system. So there's surveillance, but now the question is, will we be controlled by that system? No. It's a system that we will operate outside of because we are protected by God and we are provided for supernaturally by God. We are protected. Now, to define protection, I mean protection of our soul. Does it mean that we are subject to being persecuted, perhaps even hunted down, perhaps incarcerated, perhaps even killed? That's a distinct possibility. But what's protected is our eternity with Christ, our soul, our salvation. We can never lose that, diamonds or otherwise, unless we make the free will decision to take the mark of the beast.
Well, we were talking this morning about how this whole beast system, in a sense, is being implemented, and it forces God into a position. Not that mankind can force God into anything, but it forces God to begin to make an outward movement on behalf of his people. If God were to sit back and be silent and do nothing, then all of humanity would succumb to all of these advancements in technology.
Yep.
Which would be Satan's dream. But we know that God is very jealous for us, for his creation, and he doesn't share his glory with another. And he would not allow all of humanity to succumb to having, their memories erased or their blood changed in such a way that all of humanity becomes inhuman.
Right.
He's just not going to allow that to happen. He will arise. This is why we need to see the times that we are in, because those times are here and now.
Yep.
If it was left unchecked, Satan would progress in a manner that would change the molecular structure of the human being, the manner in which he communicates. Technology would take over. And so humanity as we know it would cease to exist as God designed it. So this is, if you will, I use the term smoking out, to get God to arise. Not that Satan wants to cause God to arise, but it's going to happen because of that.
Yep. And as you have reminded me many times, God will not forsake his children.
He won't.
He will not forsake his own. And this is what we can rest upon.
And I do believe that our molecular structure is protected by the blood of Jesus. I really do. Because you are changed in an instant. When you become a child of God, that changes you. It changes the entire frequency in which your body resonates, which your blood resonates at. And you become less like this world. It's almost like at that point you're changing and you're gravitating, as I've often said, to a different platform. We're operating on a more spiritual platform, and that's becoming more evident now. And it has to.
Well, as you said last Thursday, we are separating from the world.
We are. We're becoming less concerned about it. There'll come a point in time where death doesn't even bother us. I mean, the thought of it, it's just like, okay, well, it's just the next step.
Yep.
And the thing that we have to understand is that he is creating us. Those who are his children will, in a sense, as humanity is being changed according to Satan's plan for change of the human body, it's going to cause God's children to be changed in a different way, to be more like Jesus, to do the things that Jesus did, which is why he said, you'll do even greater things.
Yep.
So Satan has to be very careful, because when he does this, he's going to get more than he bargained for.
No, yeah.
He really is, because just think of how 12 men turned this world upside down under the power of the Holy Spirit.
And still are.
And how one, the Bible said about if one can put 10,000 to flight, two can send a legion fleeing.
Yep.
So there doesn't have to be many of us. There just has to be God's children submitted to him, repentant from their sins. There are some things that you do need to do. Don't just call yourself a Christian in name. If you're searching yourself daily and your heart daily to see, are there things that are a barrier between God and I that is stopping his being able to share with me, important information about these times that we're in, then, really do that deep introspection, and value. I was reading the story about, Isaac and Jacob and the valuing of the birthright and how important that is. That, one was actually going to the point of conniving to get that because he coveted that. He wanted it. It meant something to him. And though he went about it through deceptive means, God honored that because he desired it. And it would be to our advantage to stir up within ourselves that protective instinct, that desire, that zeal for the birthright that we've been given. To desire it more than anything, and to value it and to cherish it. So, and these are things that should be stirring in the hearts of God's children, especially now at this time.
Yep.
So, you can begin to recognize changes within you if there is a constant, pull, if you will, within you to examine the things that are happening in your life, and a real pressing from the Holy Spirit to get things right, because there is not that much time to do it. If there are people that you need to apologize to, don't wait. And don't withhold forgiveness from people. You need to get in there and you need to take care of business right now, and don't let it wait, because we don't know when this is going to happen.
That's right. One programming note. that I did not address at the very beginning that I should have before we move on. Yeah, we'll get to this. Just setting up for the next topic. YouTube. Yeah, wonderful YouTube land. Obviously, we broadcast courtesy of the YouTube servers. Many of you have heard the stories going around, the news story about YouTube, that they are sending out a new terms of service agreement that takes effect December 10th. And extracting from that is the phrase commercially viable. So the struggle has been that I've been observing as to what does that really mean? What does it entail? Well, as we know, YouTube is nothing more than an advertising platform, just like Facebook and other social media. And so they want the ability to place as many ads within a given channel as they possibly can. And to date, the predominant use that I have had, that we have had here on these live streams, is for the purpose of broadcasting the live streams, but just to ourselves. Within YouTube land, that's called unlisted. Now, if you knew the title of a given live stream, you could search it out in YouTube and you could find it, but it's not listed to the public. What YouTube wants is for the videos, for the live streams that we're doing, to be public so that they can then place ads on those public videos. So in an effort to try to forestall my channel being shut down, which would result in the live streams having to move to another platform, which would just be cumbersome and tedious for all involved, I've taken the steps, and I think many of you have seen this, of making the last several months live streams public. Now, I'm not necessarily going to benefit monetarily from that because most of those contain music that is copyrighted. There will be a few videos in there that don't contain copyrighted music, and therefore possibly I might earn a little bit of revenue from a few of those videos, but 90% of those videos contain those copyrighted music selections. Now, Doug has been great providing recently in the last several live streams royalty-free music that we've all been enjoying. So those few videos I might earn a few pennies off of, but that's, not part of the equation here. The whole point is to try to maintain the live streams on YouTube for your convenience by posting these videos. Most of you have had the opportunity to go through the videos in the archives and be able to glean the information that you want from them. So I hope you will, number one, forgive me for having to make these public. Number two, I will do my best to keep your live streams, such as the one we're doing now, the most current ones, unlisted for at least a week. And I sent a note out through Patreon regarding this. But after a week, I'll make them public so that we can kind of keep the pace going with YouTube to show them that we're continuing to post on a regular basis more videos that they can place ads on. I am not personally posting ads within my own videos. That's called embedding. I'm not doing that. The ads that you see are put on those videos by YouTube itself. Again, this is all driven by algorithms, so it will determine, whether my channel is commercially viable. But thankfully, there are over 22,000 subscribers on the channel. There are now, I think, 400 videos, and there will be quite a few more as I work backwards. But there are plenty of videos on the channel. So I think I meet the criteria for commercially viable. I don't think I really have anything to be concerned with at this point. But December 10th is the date that they're, implementing this new program. There's another one called COPPA, which is related to the Privacy Act for children. And my channel has never, and this is in the tabs, I can select whether videos that I'm producing are for children or if they're not, if they're for adults only. And my channel has always had that selected adult only feature on there. So I don't have an issue if any of you were worried about, the coming COPPA regulation. That doesn't apply to this channel. Now, you'll notice that as I post these videos, I'm working from the most current, working backward chronologically. What that does is it inverts. It's just crazy, YouTube. It inverts the video. So the first video you see in the row of videos are the oldest by date, and the newest are at the bottom. So I know it's confusing, but it really should be driven not so much by date, but by the topic, by the title of the video. If someone has an interest in that area, they'll just go to that video no matter where. I've already received today several emails from people saying, there are too many videos, there's too many videos, I don't have time to watch all this. I only have an hour a day. And I sympathize. I wouldn't go through all of my own videos, much less a channel that had 2 to 2.5 hour and sometimes 3 hour videos on there. I don't have the time for it. I find it immeasurably valuable that you have, and we're so appreciative that you spend 2 hours, sometimes longer, 3 times a week with us. And that many of you that don't listen live come back and listen to them on your own, and you spend 2 hours listening to these videos. That isn't normal in YouTube land, but that shows your intelligence. It shows your critical thinking. It shows that you're hungry for the information and the knowledge that God has chosen 2 unremarkable people, the 2 of us, to convey to you. And we're just the witnesses. We're just the pass-through conduit vehicle for the information. But I commend you for seeking the knowledge and for spending the time doing that and doing so. So that's just kind of the business, the nuts and the bolts things that I wanted to present to you, so you knew where we were going with all of this and why all of a sudden there's an explosion of unlisted videos now being made public, and there's about 1.5 years worth of videos that I still need to post. Maybe I'll get a little red star, or gold star, red star, that's communist, gold star from YouTube. Maybe it will be red from the way they're going with their censorship. Yeah, we'll make it a red star. They'll give me a red star for having the most videos posted on any channel. Who knows? I don't know. I'm just being ridiculous. Anyway.
So what were you going over before I came upstairs?
Well, I think we wrapped it up pretty much. I was talking about, the nano diamonds and Libra and all that, but I was relating it to the image of the beast. And so I'd like to go back to the landing page here for the live stream. Come on. I'm waiting for it. We're waiting. We need Jeopardy music. I briefly introduced the bowls and bowl judgments, and we don't have to go into this unless you want to. I know it's preliminary what we have. We can just talk about
what we're learning and share with them as we, that way they sort of feel like they're coming along with us, and they will be.
And that's what I was encouraging, that was what we were doing. But if you want to set this up and maybe give them an idea of how we got to the bowls, in the first place, and why we seem to think that it's significant. Oops, let me click it one more. There it is. Okay, go ahead.
Well, again, we like to share with them our discussions that we have downstairs. And this morning was the perfect morning. It was pouring rain, icy out, so we put on the fireplace and just sat there and had coffee and talked. But we were talking about some of the things that we read in the Bible. We were talking about Revelation and the bowls of judgment that God will pour out.
Yep.
And I was sharing with you how I have been reading about the Cairo I think it's either pronounced Geniza or Geniza, which is a repository for old documents typically held in the basements of synagogues and the like. But the Cairo, I'll say, I'm used to pronouncing it with a hard G, so I'll say the Cairo Geniza. They've had some amazing discoveries there. One of them was a fragment of this pottery, I guess, these bowls that they have, and I have read about them in my research about incantation bowls that were used all the time throughout the Mesopotamian region, primarily in Babylon. And that in the Cairo Geniza, there was a fragment that referenced magic spells and books that these scribes wrote down.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're beginning to read more about these magic books that were used heavily in Israel. They were brought from the Babylonian captivity, the practices, over into Israel, which again today feeds the Kabbalist movement.
Yep.
There is absolutely no doubt that magical texts, spells, recipes, this isn't Halloween, folks. This is real. This is daily activity
Today.
that they use, yes.
Yep.
Even to the point of talking about inauspicious days, which brings in from China the day books.
Yep.
So these incantation bowls contained spells. The thought of creating these bowls is that they would put them over and contain demons, if you will, and they were buried in people's houses or under their front steps or somewhere on their property, to try and control the demonic realm. So even back then, they were contending with demons, which mankind has been since the beginning of time. But if I could go through just a little bit, I'll show you my line of thinking in this.
Mm-hmm.
There was a photo that I came across, and I'll send you. Well, that would take you a long time to do it.
Is it a bowl?
It's the one about the U.S. Embassy in Iraq.
All right, I have it. I was anticipating.
Yeah.
I was anticipating. I was inferring. I was prognosticating.
And I find it interesting. There's that one, but the one that shows the tomb of the unknown soldier.
Okay, well that's not the embassy, but we're getting there.
Yep.
Okay, if you want that, I have that as well.
The artwork for that.
Yep.
Which resembles very strongly the images, the ancient drawings that we know of Babel, the Tower of Babel, and how that looked. There we go. So this is in Iraq, the tomb of the unknown soldier, and I would encourage you to go and read more about this. But the thing that caught me at first was, look at that. That reminds me so much of the images of the Tower of Babel. And there's a great mosque at Samarra. In Iraq, that I don't know if you have a picture of the Great Mosque of Samarra,
No.
But when you begin to look at that region, you can clearly see that the spirit of Babel is still there and flourishing. And I was beginning to look at the U.S. Embassy, that during the Gulf War, we took over 104 acres and built one of the largest embassies in the world. I think it is the largest embassy in the world, that employs almost 16,000 Americans in Baghdad. Not much is talked about with it, but there's a lot of activity going in and out of that place, and still it's happening there. And I think a lot of what is going on at our embassy there, it involves the mystical. I really do. I believe it involves the mystical and the housing of a lot of documents that go back to antiquity. And, I can't confirm that. I can only look at what, God is showing me and surmise that and other things are happening there. But so I went back and I did some more research on Samara in Iraq, and came up with this bowl that was discovered. And I don't know if you have a picture of that. If you can bring up that Samara bowl. Keeping in mind that these bowls are the incantation.
I don't know what you mean by the
Samara. Samara, this one.
Oh, I don't. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can put that up. But go ahead.
And from that, I began to study the markings that were on it, and there is a symbol that is very familiar there. Have you got that yet?
No, I'll have to go get it.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Let me send you the link. I'll just send you the link.
I thought I had downloaded it, but I didn't.
Nope. Okay. So there is a bowl, and at the center of this ancient bowl is a symbol that you would be very, very familiar with, and it is the swastika. And so from that, I began to research this figure and was stunned, absolutely stunned, to realize that this, though today it is most commonly known and represents Hitler and anti-Semitism. Did it come?
No. Of course not. It has to go through the NSA first.
No, not this. This is all common stuff.
There it is.
But when you begin to research this symbol that goes back to ancient times, you will realize that this was a symbol of auspiciousness or good luck until it became the Nazi symbol. So yeah, if you can pull that up, that's great. And this symbol was found in caves and across many different civilizations. So while he's doing that, I'll just go ahead and I'd like for you all, if you could, to go out to Wikipedia and just put in, let me see if I'll put it in the chat room. We'll just kind of do this together. Let me just send you this.
The Samara bowl is posted.
Okay, so, okay. All right, so if you take a look at this is one of these bowls, or incantation bowls, if you will, and it contains all different types of symbolism. I just posted in chat the link to Wikipedia, which is always a very good first place to start. If you don't know where, just try on Wikipedia first and then move out from there. But when you go and click on that link, just scroll through and you will take a look at how this particular symbol, and you heard us use the term auspicious and inauspicious days when it came to divining large movements within government and kings and military strategies. Yes. And so, and again, we're looking at this huge U.S. embassy in Baghdad. And I began to think about this, and I said, Lord, what is this? I was asking, what is this mark of the beast, in a sense, going to be? And so I get on this path that leads to this, and I was being taught about these incantation bowls and the magic spells that they would use in Babylon with these things, and how it was to affect governments and people. And I began to read about this swastika. And when you scroll down through Wikipedia, it was on cave walls. From there, it was adopted into varying forms. And as you go down, you will see, and I want you all to go out to that link. It's important that you see this with me, because if I'm off on this, I need you to tell me. But there's something called a phylot, and that's been used also. And variations of the cross have come out of this. And when you come down and you look at all of the different countries that have adopted this particular symbol, from Hinduism and Jainism and Buddhism, and then you go down and you see how in Northern Europe it's been used in the various countries. The Celtics, it's been adopted by the Celts, the Greco-Roman Empire, Armenia, and you go through all these different countries, Africa, the Americas, Britain, Denmark, Iceland, Ireland, Finland, and Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Sweden, Norway, North America. This is the one symbol that goes across the world. And I thought to myself, wait a minute. You know, and again, this is conjecture on my part. But could this particular symbol, sigil, be the variation, and it's many variations, but yet using it from the same source, be an indication of the mark of the beast? And again, I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying, could it be? Because when we, and I'll only share with you in my very, in the simple way that, you know, God often speaks to me, because it has to be simple or I will not be able to, you know, the more in-depth understanding comes after he begins to teach me. But there has to be a very simple explanation at first. You know, God doesn't complicate things. And so he said to me one time when I was looking at the cross, you know, in Christianity, people say that the cross represents, you know, the redemptive power of Jesus Christ. And, you know, we can all embrace that. That sounds right. It sounds plausible. But I had God say to me in prayer one time, he said, Kathleen, if one of your children was involved in a horrific car accident, I don't know, put us on, would you put on your neck a crumpled piece of metal, a crumpled up car, and put it on a chain and wear it on your neck because you wanted to remember the way that your son died? I thought, no. And even though we know that Jesus had to die that way according to God's plan, you know, the cross, when we look at it in the context of this, is an ever-present reminder of the torture that he endured. You know, would I wear a crumpled up car around my neck as a remembrance of my son dying? No. That would be very hard. So, I mean, we can logically tell ourselves that we know that the cross was the way that God had for Jesus to redeem humanity. We understand that. It took pain, it took blood. But when I look at this symbol across all of the world and how it has been adopted, you know, I wonder, was the cross also included in this as well? You know, and again, this is just, I'm not saying that to be factual. I question things and I think about things, and I always look to the other side to see, because, you know, I don't want to be unaware. I want to look at it from all angles. And, you know, certainly I know that when I was growing up Catholic, before I knew the Lord as I know him now, in the way that I know him now, the Catholic Church would anoint you on the head and on the hands. They would anoint you with the cross in oil, and they would anoint you on the head in oil. And I was thinking about the mark of the beast and how, you know, it's a mark on your hand, it's on your head, you know, and you think about it all the time when you go to make the sign of the cross in an organized religion. It's this. Or if it's Greek Orthodox, it's this, and then they angle it or somehow. But there are always different ways of the sign of the cross, if you will. And again, it's just something that I am myself researching more, but I put that out there to you because when I began to see this in all of its varying forms, you know, and especially that it was coming out of, you know, a divinatory practice of spells and incantations.
Didn't we read something about the swastika being a twisted form of the cross?
Yeah, it's right in here. This is an awfully long article, but yes, it is.
A twisted form of the cross.
Yeah.
A swastika.
Yeah.
Let me put that bowl back up there, the Samara bowl. This, in reading through this, the explanation was that mankind is being depicted in this bowl as moving out from the center. And when I first saw this today, I was reminded of the image of a map of the world, of the continents, as viewed from the North Pole, looking down on the North Pole as if you were above the Earth, and then seeing the continents radiating out. And it seemed very similar to that. But the idea is they're depicting mankind moving from a center point of creation outward throughout the world, is what this is representing.
Yeah, and people were also asking about, or Josh was talking about, well, I don't know if he said about Saturn. I know he's doing a lot of in-depth and good research on that. But in my reading about this particular symbol, it was connected to Saturn worship and
Saturnalia.
Saturnalia, yes.
Yep.
So again, we're doing some more research on this ourselves, but that's how I was following that line of thinking. But these incantation bowls are huge, and I would encourage people to learn more about them. And when we say learn more about them, we are not saying adopt it and practice any of these things. You just need to be aware of some of the practices that are in play that really never went away, and they've only been adapted to our culture and our times and our mechanisms. So it's important to be able to see and bring antiquity into our present day and how it had to make that transition and what that final result of that transition looks like, in terms of our technology that we use every single day. So, and again, these incantation bowls were used as books. These bowls contained the spells that were going to affect all of humanity. So that's why when we were talking this morning and I was saying about John writing Revelation, when God says that he's going to pour out his bowls of wrath, in other words, God was saying, I'll give you bowls. You want bowls? I'll give you some bowl judgments. Because they were taking these bowls, these incantation bowls from Babylon, and dare I say they're still being used in these countries today, the same spells in magic books, to pour out Satan's wrath on humanity.
Yep.
And God says, I've got these bowls that I'm going to pour out. I'll show you judgment. So, them being used, you just, you have to look at it from both sides and see.
Yeah. Again, it's going deeper.
Yeah, and as we study more about it, again, I'm still reading those books on these Chinese day books. There is just so much information about it. It almost seems as if the whole world has been just enveloped in divinatory practices, and yet we think that our, get up in the morning, eat your breakfast, get the kids ready, jump in the car, get it started, drop them off at daycare, go to work. We lose track of every other dimension that there is in life.
Yep.
And there is so much that is going on and has been, but we've been distracted. They've purposely distracted you, using entertainment and movies and sporting events and, just so many activities to distract you from what is going on behind the scenes. And they're running amok.
The operating system is all divinatory of the entire world.
And yet when we try to bring this to the forefront to show people, they're not used to thinking in that realm.
Mm-mm. Nope.
They're not. People just aren't used to thinking in that realm. And if you do think in that realm, you're labeled a conspiracy theorist or you're labeled a quack, which, so be it.
All it takes is a little bit of reading to dig this stuff up. And then it becomes very obvious how the world operates.
But they encourage people not to do research. Everything they say about technology is to make your life easier.
Convenience.
Everything is to make your life easier. Like, life is one big stage, and we're here to please you and entertain you. You know what? That's not what God says life is about.
Nope.
We're here to serve Him, not to serve ourselves and our selfish nature. I've had a period in my life where I did that. I think we all did. Where we served that selfish part of ourselves, and then, thank God, He brings us to a place where we can see that and realize that, hey, was that really living? And it's not.
So let me go back to this, if I may.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is a representation of a minaret. Okay? But we can also see that as the Tower of Babel, given the fact that this is in Baghdad. Now, this is supposed to be a shield of a soldier. I'm going to show you a different image of this, but I would like you to consider that as a bowl. Okay? Not just a shield. Remember, Kathleen said that these bowls, these incantation bowls, are placed in various locations so as to trap a demon or multiple demons. Okay? Mm-hmm. So that possibly could be a bowl at the same time. There's another image of it. It does look more like a shield there. I'm just showing it to you so you have a full appreciation. But now we're going to zoom into the cube. So back to this. There's the cube that's placed beneath what I consider a bowl. And there's the cube that is within it. Now this is all in remembrance of the unknown soldier in Iraq. Okay? See if I can find my information on that fairly quickly for us. I just want to read a little bit about this. Okay.
You looking for the...
I got it.
Okay.
I got it. Okay, the monument to the unknown soldier is a monument in central Baghdad built by Italian architect Marcello di Olivo. Okay, based on a concept by Iraqi sculptor, and I can't pronounce his name, in 1979 to 82. That's when it was built. Okay, so this is long before the Gulf Wars. This was erected between 79 and 82. It was dedicated to the martyrs of the Iran-Iraq War. Okay? Now, scan down through this a little bit. At the side of the dome is a spiral tower, which is reminiscent of a minaret at Samarra. We just talked about the Samarra Bowl.
Yeah, we talked about the Samarra Bowl, but I think people should also go out and if they type in Samarra, Samarra, minaret, Minaret, you'll take a look at what looks exactly like the Tower of Babel according to the ancient drawings that has been depicted, if you will.
Yep.
So.
Now, there's a description of this spiral tower, and it kind of goes into a lot of detail there, but I want to focus on the cube. Beneath the shield is a cube. And remember, D-Wave's quantum computers are a black cube. Mecca, black cube. Made of 7 layers of metal, said to represent the 7 levels of jhana in the Islamic faith. Inside the layers of metal are sheets of red acrylic, said to represent the blood of the slain Iraqi soldiers. The cube itself is connected to the underground museum by a long shaft with windows that allow light to shine in from above. Inside the museum, visitors can look up at the ceiling and see through the openings leading to the cube above. Now, I don't know if Doug Diamond's listening tonight or not. I didn't see him in the chat room. He may be listening later. But it brings me back to the discussion he and I had last week, and that is the blood of Christ. Let me go back on camera here. When Christ was crucified and the blood ran down to the rock, and then there, of course, there was an earthquake at the time that he was killed, so the rock was split, so the blood and water ran down through the crack down beneath the site of the crucifixion. And possibly, and again, this is all part of the discussion that took place between Doug and myself, possibility that the Ark of the Covenant was discovered beneath the site of Christ's crucifixion, and that his blood and water ran down through the crack onto the actual Ark of the Covenant itself. Now, I mention that because of what I just read to you that is described here with the monument, of the unknown soldier in Baghdad. That you have a black cube, essentially, blood running down as symbolically referenced, which I consider to be a counterfeit of the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. And I believe that that black cube, from our perspective as Christians, this is my interpretation, it doesn't say it anywhere, but my interpretation that this is a counterfeit. Sorry, I'm just dealing with my computer here. A counterfeit to the act of crucifixion, and the blood draining down through the rock through the crack in the earth. So here you have a incantation bowl being placed over a spirit, which is supposed to be the unknown soldiers, the martyrs, while you got the Tower of Babel right next to it. You put it together. I'm not trying to be too flippant there, but I mean, it's pretty much in your face, I think, that it's a counterfeit to the crucifixion of Christ. And then the whole hubris of the Tower of Babel and ascending to heaven and the killing of God and his angels scenario and all of that playing out. It's just remarkable. But did you want to talk about the embassy? I know you're looking at questions and comments and stuff, but I've got that if you wanted it.
Well, I'm learning ancient Israel and the Levant. If we look at the history of Israel, that included, did that go out to Iraq?
There it is right there. I have several maps because there are different interpretations and versions. I'm just showing one so far. There's Iraq, there's Baghdad.
Yeah, depending on the century, it changed.
Right.
But I mean, when we look biblically at the land of Israel, and God said that Israel owned the lands from Dan to Beersheba. Did that include Iraq? Was that included in that?
Well, you have part of Iraq. Again, it depends upon the interpretation by archaeologists and scholars and biblical interpreters as to how much of Iraq, but it did at least touch upon Iraq. And so we have Baghdad right here. Okay. So Iraq, part of Iran, certainly Syria, and what I found interesting in one of the maps is little old Cyprus. Everything in yellow here is the Levant. Cyprus, which of course figures heavily in my second novel, 2048 Diamonds in the Rough. But Cyprus at the northern half is controlled by Turkey, the lower half southern half by the Cypriots. It is divided across the midline as a demilitarized zone that is patrolled by the UN. And the Russians have a naval presence, naval base at the southern tip of Cyprus, just off the coast of Israel. And of course, between Cyprus and Israel is the underwater seabed natural gas field known as the Leviathan. And they also have huge oil deposits there, as well as in the Golan being the source now, identified as the source of all oil, the well, if you will, source of all oil for all of the Middle East out of the Golan Heights. And now they've also declared that there's over $1 billion gold discovery in the Golan Heights. So, now the Zionist political agenda is why we're bringing the Levant up in this discussion, is because, as we've said in a live stream devoted to just the Levant discussion, but in short, it is the agenda of the Zionist political movement to reestablish the original borders of the Levant, which is the promised land for Israel. So if you missed that live stream, that's kind of why we're repeating this here, because it figures into what is happening right now in the Middle East and why all of this struggle is going on and the warfare is going on.
Well, I'm posting another link in the chat room that I want people to take a look at, which got me on this, this questioning of the cross and, the different forms that it has taken from antiquity to now. Again, I think that there is a lot that we're trying to bring to people's understanding, through historical, archaeological, because a lot of this stuff is out of archaeology and what they've dug up. These incantation bowls were just so prominent in Babylon, and Babylon was just like the magic center of the world, and it directed the course of the world,
and it still does today.
And it didn't die.
We focus on Israel, the U.S. Let's just say the world is focused. It's a cup of trembling. Israel, Jerusalem, a cup of trembling. But at the same time, as you pointed out to me about the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad, huge, largest embassy, U.S. embassy probably the largest embassy of any country in the world. So let me just put that up while we're talking about that. But it begs the question, why? Why this huge? What's the necessity?
104 acres. And I had been reading in some on some websites where people talk, that there's a lot of activity of containers going in and out of that embassy. Some suspect, it could be weapons. Others suspect it could be, there's a whole bunch of talk of what it could be. But it does beg the question, why did it have to be so large? Why is the United States setting up a temple, if you will, which this embassy is, in Babylon?
Look at the dome.
I know.
Again, maybe I'm reaching too far here, but maybe this is where they're really planning on setting up a third temple. Now, we already went through the whole discussion about saying that our bodies, we are the temple
Right.
of the Holy Spirit, and
Right.
the abomination of desolation is the attack upon our human bodies, upon our minds, upon our spirit, upon our soul,
Total
all of that.
domination is what they're
And
trying for.
that's what we consider the true abomination of desolation that's taking place right now in the true temple, in God's temple, the temple of the Holy Spirit. But if a third temple is going to be built, what's to say? Again, this is just throwing stuff on the wall and see if it'll stick, okay? What if they're not going to build the temple on the Temple Mount or the city of David, but where this U.S. Embassy is already standing? Who knows?
Well,
Who knows?
that's when we were talking, that's why I was asking you, and I am not, a scholar in any sense of the word, and I don't profess to know more than what I know. I'm learning every day, and I think it's important. We were discussing about Israel, and I said to you, where do the ancient borders of Israel go to? I'd love to know where the line of demarcation was when you go back to antiquity as to what was considered Israel. What encompassed Israel owning from Dan to Beersheba? What was that? And I would ask anyone in chat who knows what those lines are. I mean, I could find them out eventually. I'll look for them. But based upon the limited time that we had in discussing this today, I haven't had time to do all of that. So I was asking you about the Levant and how far it went. Was there a time that Israel did encompass, part of Iraq? I mean, but Israel, the Jews were taken into captivity in Babylon. So I don't know if you had to go back even further than that, in a sense, to find out. I don't know, but I'm thinking that this certainly would be considered a modern day wonder, if you will. That the United States would build such a huge embassy, and you don't hear anything about it. 16,000 Americans are employed at that embassy in Baghdad. What are they doing there? What are they doing? So,
and there have been stories and rumors that at the outbreak of the first Gulf War, that special operations troops from the United States and possibly from allied nations, coalition nations as it was called during the wars, that they had raided and looted Iraqi museums and captured artifacts. So again, I'm going way out on the limb, throwing it against the wall. Possibly there are significant artifacts in the U.S. Embassy. Possibly, if we're talking of things like incantation bowls from the area, that this whole spiritual process involving books, bowls, etc., is taking place with specialists in those areas. Kind of sounds like Indiana Jones stuff, but possibly that kind of spiritual activity is why there is such a large building for the embassy.
I would venture to say, in my estimation, getting hold of any ancient manuscript book that contained certain spells, recipes, and we don't take that term lightly.
Nope.
These are processes that have been in place since antiquity that were used
and proven.
Yes. To show the conquest of nations, the subjugation of peoples to ruling powers of the day, that those would be your biggest weapons today. It would be your biggest weapon. You don't need
Yep.
nuclear weapons. You don't need these, because they're dealing with spiritual forces. And the time has come where those spiritual forces have drawn very, very near. And they need to learn, if you will, to speak that language and how to interact with that realm.
Can I interject?
Please.
Okay, so we go back to John Dee and Edward Kelly. We go back to Ramon Lull. We go to Crowley and Blavatsky. All of these people we've talked about for years were involved in communicating with a angelic alphabet and an angelic numerical system.
Mm-hmm.
And they were communicating with the governors of the fallen angels. And they were obtaining forbidden knowledge. Okay? So all of what we've been talking about is now pulling together, as some of you have been acknowledging, coalescing together now. So imagine at the U.S. Embassy, you have specialists like John Dee and Edward Kelly type people who know the Enochian language. That's what it was called, the language of the fallen angels, Enochian language, the alphabet and the numerical system. This is what Dee and Kelly had to memorize, was the alphabet, in order to communicate with the fallen angels, specifically the governors. And they were in search of the keys, which there are 49. The 49th key is also the first key, but it is the key that was withheld and has still been withheld until the time of the apocalypse. Even Crowley was forbidden by the angels he was communicating with from obtaining the information contained in the 49th key, which was, he was told, was to be held until the time of the apocalypse. So, understanding all of that, if they have gathered artifacts and written documentation dating back 3,500 years to the origin of the written language for the human race, remember the Chinese written language dates back only to 1400 BC, 3500 BC in Mesopotamia, which includes Babylon. So these are written records of instructions that have been proven to be effective in communicating and obtaining information and foretelling the future, the auspicious days and inauspicious days, the prognostications. This is why we have said that if you can predict the future, if prediction, prognostication
You run the world.
is the most valuable commodity on the planet to foretell the future. So if this is, again, pure conjecture, but if you pull all this together at the U.S. Embassy and say, this is what the leadership of the world are focused on, is using that area to communicate with the governors. And we just read it today. These incantation bowls are used for communicating with governors. That process being a proven, historically through the ages, proven process of information exchange and direction and foretelling the future. There's no reason to say that it's not going on today. And I would speculate that it's taking place at our U.S. Embassy in Baghdad.
Well, we have heard from individuals who have told us that at the highest levels there is magic being, and Satan worship and this type of activity taking place.
Oh, yeah.
And because of our close alignment with Israel, and again, when I say Israel, I'm not being anti-Semitic against the average Israeli citizen. I'm not. I'm talking just like in our government. I don't paint with a wide brush all Americans. I'm not saying all Israelis. So, because I don't want them to try and pin me as saying I'm being anti-Semitic. I'm talking about the governmental leadership in charge there.
Yep.
And when you look at Israel and where their alliances are with the Kabbalists, who are Satanists, who are practicing this magical divination of every sort, and we are aligned with them, setting up a post in Baghdad is more than just a strategic, we're gonna put our foot down here. This is our footprint. We're gonna stay here. No, it's more than that. It's much more than that.
It's placed there because of the historical significance, and the historical significance is the practices that have gone down through antiquity, including the manuscripts and the artifacts.
Right. And it is temple-like. Take a look at it. It's temple-like. They're not going to build a temple like they did in the past.
Right. I
mean, they could go back and say, okay, let's build a recreation of, Solomon's temple. Well, good luck with that. You can, but why spend all that money when the other one was destroyed, the one before it was destroyed? God said that he would never, ever again reside in a temple made with human hands.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the point of throwing all of your money into something like that for the symbolism of it? That's taking you totally in another different direction, because God is in here.
Right.
And that's, and building another temple is just a diversionary tactic of Satan's. Do I not think that at some point, whoever the Antichrist is going to be, whatever body he's going to take up residence in, will sit himself in a position, in a place like that? Very well could be.
Yeah. Well, Revelation indicates that he will.
The largest temple there was a temple that was erected in Baghdad, and I think that was destroyed, but it was Saddam, I don't know, what wasn't, what we were reading about, it was absolutely decimated. It was destroyed.
His palace.
And so the United States raises up this huge, the largest U.S. embassy, which could be a temple,
yep.
In Baghdad.
Mm-hmm.
So...
Well, we were funding, and this goes back into the 70s, we were funding in Iraq the rebuilding by Saddam Hussein of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon.
Mm.
We were right there with him, building with our own companies, rebuilding it.
Yep.
So.
Well, I think that...
Food for thought, guys. Food for thought.
Yeah, we'll
Any
definitely
questions?
be looking into it more.
We got a few minutes. If anybody's got questions, we'll go ahead and direct the time to that.
Susan was saying, I wonder if some bloodlines are more prone to have knowledge imparted without any effort. How can we explain psychic ability? Some people seem to have been born with that. Did you hear that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know. I think it just goes to sensitivity. I mean, we all know that there are people that are more sensitive with people, with animals, with even sensing the future, coming events, near events. Now, I don't discount it, and I think that when we've talked in the past about DNA and bloodlines, we have said that there is a generational knowledge that is stored in the DNA, and the experiences and the knowledge gained by one person passed on to another generation in that bloodline, and that contributes, that knowledge and experience base that is contained in the library of DNA is why the focus on the bloodline by monarchs, the monarchies and the emperors and dictators. Why bloodlines are so important, because it not only shows your family lineage, it not only shows who your shows your birthright, but it contains skills and capabilities, and perhaps those include spiritual capabilities and sensitivities contained in that DNA. I mean, there are, scholarly records that are replete with people that we would consider to be spiritualists and sensitives and that sort of thing. So I think it does, is carried and born out and generated from the DNA itself.
Well, we had a lot of conjecture tonight based upon a lot of things that we've just recently today come upon. Again, these various devices that are used in conjuring. And I know it seems like we spend an awful lot of time unveiling the evil that's at work, but we also try to balance that by highlighting the power of God that that He has given to humanity, and that power that I think it will increase to the level that people devote time with the Lord and make Him a priority, because He's not going to entrust that power to just someone who turns around and says, follows the evangelical pathway to supposedly relationship with God, just repeat after me, and then they say the sinner's prayer. God is not going to entrust His power to somebody who recites words.
Yep.
He's going to entrust His power to people that have been tried, through a variety of life's difficulties, pain, struggle, loss. He's going to put His power in people that have tried and failed and yet got back up and prevailed. So, all of the struggles that we go through in our life and all of the hardest things that life can throw at us, from sicknesses to poverty to just, death, everything that seems so hard for a human being to endure, that when we find ourselves in the process of coming through it, is building us and strengthening us so that we can take that power that God gives to us and use it, not in a manner that's showy. It has to be something that is as natural and yet tempered with wisdom, so that there is a knowing of when and how it's supposed to be applied. And studying Jesus, when we look at it from that perspective, makes it very interesting. He didn't just go throwing His power about, to look at me. I mean, He would disappear into a crowd. It's like He would do it and then just quietly leave. And
yeah, and the comment I made to you earlier today about Jesus and about the written record in the Bible, we all as a group can readily appreciate that there have been things deliberately kept from the Bible, the modern Bible, things that have been removed, things that have been purposely changed, things that were inadvertently changed, things that were
left out,
reinterpreted. Yeah, I said removed. And so I think it is imperative that we do look at other sources of information. A lot of times there's kind of this gut reaction against extra biblical information. And yet what we're trying to present is that there are historical documents that can be looked at to understand the times, the context of the time, the culture of the time, the practices, the technologies of the time, the magic of the time, the traditions of those times, because they carry forward to today. Really, they haven't been changed, other than maybe how they manifest in terms of technology. But I think it's important to keep an open mind, not that we're saying to take away from the Bible or to add to the Bible. We're just simply saying that to get a better grasp of history, we need to go extra biblical. And every time we do this, it confirms the Word. It confirms what we do see in the Bible today, whether it's been manipulated, deleted, whatever's happened to the Bible through the ages. We still are able to see, even in the secular world, confirmation of what still remains in the Bible today.
Yeah, I think that as we do the research, it confirms. I've had a lot of people, well, not a lot of people, but we've had a number of people that almost attack you because they'll say, "Where is that in the Bible?" And there's a lot in the Bible that begs further investigation, further research in order to pull together a better understanding of the time and context in which it was spoken.
That's right.
You know, you need to understand the historical features of that time and, you know, what was going on and who was at war. And so, I mean, you know, there's a lot of things that you need to take into account, that you have to go outside of the Bible to try and put all of the pieces together.
Yep.
So, you know, I think people here understand that.
They do.
They understand it. And to the best of our ability, we always try and cite, especially in your magazine and these live streams, you know, through links that we provide and books that we hold up and say this is what we're looking at, and white papers that we'll often post in Patreon for them to look at. You know, this is an interactive
forum.
Yeah, that they need to it's not something that you can really sit back and just listen to.
No.
Because it only begs more questions. Questions that we're asking ourselves, questions that others are asking us, you know, and certainly we will do our best to provide the answers as best we can, but there are people that are in our chat room that are very good with research, you know, in their areas of interest, and sometimes those things will overlap, and we absolutely, you know, ask you to share that information with us, you know, to be able to get a fuller picture, better understanding.
Well,
you know,
that's the basis of what we're encouraging here, is people doing their own research.
Absolutely.
And sharing it with us. And I must say, the majority of the emails that we receive are supportive of what we're trying to do here. And it's only on a rare occasion we'll get a detractor, but those detractor situations are just indications of a lack of information, a lack of doing research on their own. I don't judge anyone on those, but the focus that we are focused upon are the positives, not just because people are saying nice things, but because people are contributing their own research, their own source materials that definitely adds to what we're talking about here.
You know, tonight when we talked about Revelation and God's bowls of judgment, and then this whole thing about the incantation bowls, this we were just really delving into today. So if there are gaps, bear with us. We'll try and fill them in. One of the things that I wanted to try and explain from an email that was sent to us, you know, people have questions, and it's always about the timeline. And, you know, does this come before that? And, you know, in Revelation it says this, and does this... I have to tell you, that is not my specialty and my area of expertise. I cannot tell you, you know, if somebody says to me and says, well, you know, in Revelation it says that this has to happen first before this happens, and then that has to happen before this will happen. That is not my strong suit. My area that I see God leading me in is to be able to look at things that are happening in our current events, or our current modern world, and technology and science. With your help, together we are able to see how science proves what the Bible is saying and gives us a broader picture. I think that we have painted very clearly and undeniably for everyone that listens to us that we are in the end times with the beast system fully in place and operational now. That is, there's no denying it. There's no denying it. If you ask me, you know, well, what time is this going to happen? I can't tell you that. I wish I could, but I can't. I can only say that as we see these things come into play, there are going to be things that, you know, will absolutely prove themselves. You know, I think you can expound on that a little bit more, but we were just saying that I don't have the understanding of Revelation. I haven't studied it so extensively that I can say, well, this war has to happen first, and then the man of perdition is going to arise, and this and this and this. We can see it all lining up technologically, scientifically, and God gives me insights into things to look for. He brings the past into the present and shows me the mirror of that and what has evolved and what it's evolved into. He speaks things to me that I never knew, and then brings me to that information to confirm it, and then we share it with people. That's how he works with me.
A simple example of how information's presented to us that gives us a glimpse of perhaps how things are going to happen in the near future is Libra. When they're saying that in the first half of 2020 they're going to launch Libra, well, there's a timetable.
Right.
And so...
But we didn't set it. They did.
We didn't set it. They did.
Yeah.
And when we see things like that where they're saying that, by a certain time span they're going to implement something in technology, not just Libra. But we have shown you different things, and it began with CERN, but we've shown you different things in technology where something is about to be introduced, and we try to be leading edge, tip of the spear, as far looking as we possibly can when we run across these things in technology. Then we say, okay, this is in place now, and this is what the repercussions are going to be of that technology. Again, takes me back to the beginning of tonight, talking about artificial general intelligence. Okay, what does that mean in terms of Revelation? The image of the beast, how that works out. But that does not encompass specific dates, but it gives us the season. That's what we're supposed to be able to understand are the seasons, and we know we're in the season of the beast system, already fully fledged, already running. I've said many times, and this is where the questions have come up, when I have said something like the flipping of the switch. Well, it's like, do you have a specific date, an hour, as to when the switch is going to be thrown?
No, but with every new revelation to the advancements in 5G and now 6G, if you can believe it, which they're probably already enacting and working on 7 maybe, I don't know, but those are the telltale signs that we go by.
Yep.
Those are the things that lead us to understand that we have advanced to another phase of
the beast system. Yep.
And so I guess that's what we're keeping people abreast of, is how that is developing. But that too would not be identified if we were not in the time that God would want us to know these things. There is an unveiling taking place. I was reading the other night, I read a lot, but I was reading the other night about the mystery of iniquity, and I've read sermons and white papers on it, and really what I think it comes down to is just the very basic understanding. What is the mystery of iniquity? Well, mysterion, it's the unveiling, if you will. It's the iniquity is it's the evil that's presenting itself in this day. It's the lack. It's the the lack of good judgment, the lack of love, the lack of just goodness that we're seeing in the world. So when we say the mystery of iniquity, it's sort of like really people just wondering what the heck is going on here in this world, that people are acting like this, and that countries and our world is in such utter turmoil. Well, that's the mystery. Everybody's wanting to know why, it's happening. Take it in its literal form. In iniquity, I always love to look up words, and I think I did have this marked, but let's just, for the heck of it, just read it. Wickedness, sinfulness, immorality, impropriety, evil, sin. These are all of the words that describe iniquity. And so we want to know, the mystery. What is it about wickedness, sinfulness, immorality, impropriety, evil in this world? You know, it doesn't have to be something that is, you know, so hidden that people can't find it. I don't think that God would want that. You know, he's unveiling the mystery of iniquity, and it's found in all of these divinatory practices that we're talking about that have gone back to antiquity.
And now he's laying it bare.
He's pulling it back, and he's saying, you want to know, this is what's at the heart of this beast system. This is how it operates. This is its process.
And the old title, Mystery Babylon.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I just want to know why we built such a big embassy there. You know.
All right. Well, let's wrap this up because I'm respectful of
yeah.
the 2 hours that people spend with us. So, anything pressing in the chat room we need to address before we say goodnight?
I don't know. Let me see. Does the Cabal still have those hidden books, tablets, or are they destroyed? Will we ever find or validate their authenticity? I would say yes, they absolutely have them. They are using them. The evidence of the evil in this world is evidence of that. But
we were just reading today that many of the artifacts, the written records that have been gathered just in the 20th century from the Sumerian area,
Cairo, Geniza, or Geniza,
that these are just coming to light, just being translated. Appreciating that there are not that many scholars that can read and translate, especially the cuneiform. We read just a couple of months ago that the cuneiform documents, numbering somewhere around 1,700 of them, that scholars only since the last 20 to 30 years have been able to translate. And then from translation, understanding what they just translated. So really, and then we're not even getting into the day books of China that have been discovered in tombs and burial sites, numbering in the thousands of day books that, again, haven't been translated, haven't been interpreted and put in modern context of understanding. So there is a wealth of information that is in the written records, both stone tablets and papyrus and baskets. Remember, the baskets, the bowls, which are baskets, but the bowls are, for the most part, clay or woven, and they have symbols. They have, as I showed you, they have drawings. They have alphabet, language written onto them, but many times they're woven and then painted with sigils and symbols on them that are much like you would find on the walls in Egypt, in the in the pyramids, the hieroglyphics and the images, which convey more information than words can convey. And so these are conveyed on the baskets, on the bowls themselves, as symbols and as drawings, because these date back prior to 3500 BC at the start of the written record. So you had an oral tradition that was augmented by bowls and baskets, depending on the area of the world, that would convey information through the generations by the weaving of the baskets, by the throwing of the potter's clay. You find this in Native America, in the United States. The oral traditions, the information contained in basket weaving, even in whether it's a spiral weave or it's a basket weave, and then painted with symbols and with letters. So it's important not to discount artifacts, archaeological artifacts, such as bowls and baskets, and just think that they were used as utensils, implements, and they were just decorated for the sake of decorating. They were conveyors of information from generation to generation. And these are just in the 20th century coming to light through digs, through scholars learning the language and the symbols, and then being able to translate and then interpret. So yes, there's an awful lot of documentation that still exists from antiquity.
Yeah, and it wasn't. It's hidden, but certain individuals have it, and they know in certain groups. Israel, I know, houses a lot of it, and
we look at that nefarious organization known as the Smithsonian Institute. Give me a break. They're as bad as NASA.
But you know what? What's amazing is that we don't have to rely on WikiLeaks or anything like that, because God Himself is giving us insight into the workings of these, masters of iniquity, if we could put it that way. Not mystery, the masters of iniquity.
Yep.
And so the Holy Spirit can take us sort of right past that.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't matter. We may never know where some of these things are hidden, but the Holy Spirit will bring everything to light, and it's the time that it should.
Yep.
And I think that's what they fear most, is that these things are going to come out. They can hide it under a bush or do whatever they want to do, but they can't hide from the Holy Spirit giving revelation to His children, which is exactly what's happening right now.
That's right.
And that's because the stakes are high.
Yep.
There are lives at stake. There are souls at stake. And
the world's at stake.
Absolutely. And God doesn't want even one of us to perish.
Yep.
So, it's important that as children of God, we bring our life before Him, so that we can, address the matters that need to be addressed, so that, we can't be accused.
All right, let's say goodnight. I don't want to hold people up too much.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your prayers, and send your prayer requests to us, and we humbly acknowledge those and follow through on those prayer requests. And we thank you very much for your friendship and fellowship here. Lord willing, we'll get together on Wednesday and Thursday. Where's my note? Wednesday and Thursday, I do believe I'm going to do some more debunking of the Big Bang. Some interesting conversation I ran across today on the Big Bang again. We're going to go into the electric model of the universe we've covered before. I want to talk about physics. I want to talk about quantum mechanics, but it's the flip of it. I've been talking about and using their language, their axioms, their theorems. Now I'm going to turn the tables on that. And I did this once before, but I can tell by the emails that I need to do this again. So Wednesday, Thursday, debunking the Big Bang. With that, we'll say thank you, God bless you, and good night.